it just went downhill like a domino effect from the moment with Checo, and then balance just got more and more snappy, more and more oversteery.
Mercedes, which seemed to have found the path to redemption, surprised us with a dramatic turn of events. From a promising start in free practice to a disastrous Saturday in qualifying, the German team experienced heaven and hell in a matter of hours. What happened to Mercedes? How was Lewis Hamilton eliminated so early in qualifying? And what can we expect for the race? In this video, we'll dive deep into this story of rise and fall, analyzing every detail of this crazy weekend in Zandvoort. Now let's go back in time, more precisely to Friday, when Mercedes made us believe we were about to witness a triumphant return. The free practice sessions in Zandvoort were nothing short of spectacular for the German team. George Russell, in a display of pure speed and control, led FP2 with an impressive time of 1:10.702. But it wasn't just Russell who shined. Lewis Hamilton wasn't far behind, setting the third best time of the session. The entire paddock was buzzing. Had Mercedes finally found the magic formula to challenge Red Bull and McLaren? Hamilton's optimistic statements after practice only increased this expectation. "It's a big difference compared to last year. The car is definitely feeling more alive and we're right up there at the front," Hamilton said, barely able to contain his enthusiasm. But what was behind this sudden improvement in performance? The answer was literally under the car. Mercedes brought a new floor to Zandvoort, a part that had been tested and removed in Spa. Andrew Shovlin, Mercedes trackside engineering director, confirmed that the new floor would stay on the cars for the rest of the weekend. It was a vote of confidence and a high-stakes bet by the team. The new floor wasn't just about pure speed. The drivers reported that the car was more predictable, more alive. This meant they could push harder, trust the car more, and extract those precious tenths of a second that make all the difference in F1. Mercedes seemed to have finally found the key to unlocking the true potential of the W15. And it wasn't just Mercedes who was impressed. Lando Norris of McLaren admitted that Mercedes seemed to be the fastest at the moment. Coming from a driver who has been consistently on the podium in recent races, that was quite a compliment. The entire paddock was waiting. Would this be the weekend we'd see Mercedes return to the top of the podium? But then came Saturday, and with it, a twist worthy of a Hollywood script. Qualifying began, and all eyes were on the silver cars. Expectations were high, after all. Following their performance in free practice, it seemed we were about to see an epic battle for pole position. Q1 passed without major scares, with Hamilton and Russell advancing to Q2, but that's when the nightmare began for the German team. While Russell managed to qualify for Q3, finishing in a respectable fourth place, Hamilton faced a total disaster. The seven-time world champion, the man who holds the record for poles in F1, was eliminated in Q2, finishing in a shocking 12th place. The paddock fell silent. Mercedes fans around the world couldn't believe what they were seeing. How was this possible? How could the team that seemed so dominant in free practice fall so dramatically when it mattered most? Theories began to emerge immediately. Was it a car setup problem? Had track conditions changed drastically? Or had Mercedes bet all its chips on a setup that worked well for practice but not for qualifying? Hamilton's fall wasn't just a blow to his own championship aspirations, but also a hard hit to Mercedes' hopes in the Constructors' Championship. With Russell in fourth and Hamilton far behind, the team suddenly found itself in a much more difficult position than expected after Friday's promising practice sessions. This unexpected qualifying result not only shook the team's confidence, but also had a significant impact on Mercedes' hopes for both championships, drivers, and constructors. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes had been on the rise, trying to close in on Ferrari. With the mixed result in qualifying, Russell in fourth and Hamilton in 12th, the German team now finds itself in a delicate position. They will need an exceptional performance from both drivers in the race to minimize the damage and keep their aspirations of finishing the season in third place alive. For Hamilton, the situation in the Drivers' Championship became a bit complicated. The seven-time champion was on a good run, achieving podiums in recent races. This early elimination in qualifying puts even more pressure on his shoulders. Every point will be crucial from here on out, if he wants to finish the season in a respectable position. Meanwhile, Mercedes' rivals seem to be on the rise. McLaren, with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, showed once again that their car is capable of fighting for top positions. Red Bull, even with Max Verstappen facing some challenges, remains the team to beat. And we can't forget Ferrari, which even with its inconsistencies, managed to place both its drivers ahead of Hamilton. The contrast between expectations after free practice and the reality after qualifying couldn't be greater. It's a cruel reminder of the unpredictable and often harsh nature of Formula One. In a matter of hours, Mercedes went from favorite to underdog, from hunter to hunted. But, as we know, in F1 nothing is decided until the checkered flag is waved. The race is still to come, and with it, the chance for redemption. Russell, starting fourth, has an excellent opportunity to fight for a podium. And Hamilton? Well, we've seen the seven-time champion perform miracles starting from much worse positions. Now with all this scenario established, let's look ahead. What can we expect for Sunday's race in Zandvoort? Well, one thing is certain. There will be no shortage of excitement. Starting with George Russell, the young Brit has an excellent opportunity starting from fourth position. The pace shown in free practice suggests he has a car capable of fighting for the podium. If Russell can get a good start and avoid problems in the first few laps, he may well be fighting with the leaders throughout the race. But what about Lewis Hamilton? Well, if there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's that we should never underestimate a seven-time world champion. Starting from 12th position, Hamilton will face a big challenge. However, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen him make a spectacular recovery race. The key for Hamilton will be strategy and tire management. Speaking of strategy, Zandvoort is a track where it can make all the difference. With difficult overtaking, choosing the right moment for pit stops and managing traffic will be crucial. Mercedes will have to be creative and bold if they want to maximize their results. And we can't forget the weather factor. The forecasts for Sunday are uncertain, with chances of rain. If the weather changes, all bets are off. A race in the rain could be exactly what Hamilton needs to make a heroic recovery. Regardless of Sunday's outcome, this weekend in Zandvoort has already left valuable lessons for Mercedes. The first and most obvious is the importance of consistency throughout the entire weekend. Performing well in free practice is great, but it's in qualifying and the race where points are scored. The team has also learned that, despite recent improvements, there's still work to be done. The new floor looks promising, but clearly there are still adjustments to be made to extract its maximum potential in all conditions. Who do you think will shine in Zandvoort? And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button right now so you don't miss any analysis and discussion about the world of Formula One. Until next time, folks, may the best win in Zandvoort.
For the Dutch Grand Prix, meaning Max Verstappen, if he wants to win his home race for the fourth time in a row, will have to do so not from the front of the field. The big surprises, though, no doubt Mercedes. We knew Ferrari weren't going to be very good, but even George Russell, who did make it to Q3, was significantly off the pace of Norris, and Lewis Hamilton couldn't even make it out of Q2, especially after all the drama with Sergio Perez that happened earlier on in the session. Lots of reaction today. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. This, of course, being the crash of Logan Sargent, we shall get to hear over the coming minutes. Before we get there, couple of updates around the world of Formula One. Firstly, this on Haas, right? We saw the talk yesterday that Haas have been under threat of Uralkali getting their assets seized because they've not paid back this Russian oil sponsor that sponsored them for quite some time and effectively got them through the pandemic in many ways. Apparently, though, that deal is now done. The Dutch authorities came in and said, yeah, you've got to pay these guys. And obviously, there's a bit of controversy about that in the first place. Apparently, they've now done so, and therefore they will be allowed to race at Monza because they will be allowed to actually take their car and parts of the machinery and all this out of the country, which was not otherwise going to be the case. Of course, yesterday we saw that Jack Doohan was confirmed as the new driver for Alpine alongside Pierre Gasly for next season. This was interesting just because Mick Schumacher did a test, we believe, I'm pretty sure this is like confirmed in public, alongside Jack Doohan a little while ago now, and eventually they chose Doohan in some sense over Mick Schumacher. So there might have been some expectation. They could have informed Mick to say, hey, we've decided to go this other route. But apparently Mick only found out the same time the rest of us did, which, some people are reading that as like, well, whatever, this is sport. Some people are saying it's disrespectful. Obviously, there's a debate on it. I guess on one level, keeping him in the dark kind of means that the WEC team that he's a part of, he's kind of less likely to leave and go elsewhere. So I'm sure there was some weird politics in play. This was very interesting, though, as well from Toto Wolff. We saw that yesterday he slipped up and confirmed that the driver lineup next year will be Russell and Antonelli. But he actually did say that it's not over for Max yet. I mean, the level of seduction here we're talking about is weapons grade. But look, Toto's trying his best to get Max to the team, and maybe he's going to be successful in doing so. But it's not going to happen next year. Toto has a feeling that their paths will cross at some point. Maybe 2026, maybe later. That's what he's talking about. And he even talks about how the relationship with Max, he feels like he might have been able to get the deal done now, but it wasn't as smooth as it might have been at their discussions this season because of what happened back in 2021. This is kind of crazy. I just wanted to go through it, but he talks about how they had a very good relationship with Max. Of course, he could never join Mercedes initially. Toto wasn't able to get him a drive because they had Hamilton and Rosberg. So Helmut Marko and Red Bull were, because they could put him in the Toro Rosso and quite quickly into the Red Bull. And Toto says, I made a mistake after Silverstone 2021. Of course, they had that crash, and obviously it was very heated from both sides at that point. Toto was angry about the whole situation, and after Paul Monaghan from Red Bull said that Max was fine, Toto didn't follow it up further. But at that point, I guess he was in relatively regular communication with Jos Verstappen, Max's father, and he says in hindsight he should have called Jos and said, look, tough day, is Max all right after the big crash and everything like that, and kind of chilled it out a bit. But Toto says that he relied on information, that he was okay, and he was okay. I mean, we believe he had some sort of concussion, though, actually, because his vision in the later half of the season was apparently giving Max problems. But, Toto says in hindsight, had he called Jos and kind of calmed the moment, as it were, after that very dramatic day at Silverstone a few years ago now, maybe the relationship with Jos would have been better, the relationship with Max would have been better, such that that deal could have been done for next season in 2025 for Max to join, rather than the Verstappen camp holding off and not being so sure Mercedes is the right option, maybe not fully trusting Toto Wolff or whatever the case might be. So I thought that was very interesting. I guess Max is still potentially an option for 2026. We know that there's some sort of performance contract as well, like if the Red Bull isn't so good next year, Max is going to be able to walk away from his contract. Toto would love to have him, so I thought the whole situation is kind of fascinating, but this was another big talking point of the day. Logan Sargeant in the wall, and look, there's no excuses for this one. The grass is wet. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Why are we on the grass? Why have we got two tyres on the grass? It's an error that you don't see many drivers making, certainly not at this level. And, every single time Sargeant hits the track, he gives me a reason to want him no longer to be in the sport, respectfully. So, he's going to be gone in a few races' time. He gets the rest of the season, right? We thought that maybe Antonelli would come in instead, but Mercedes are convinced that he's the man anyway, so that's not necessarily going to matter. And then Sargeant spun out was quickly in the wall. I mean, big impact, right? Like, the good thing about this impact, okay, it's not good in some ways, it's kind of spectacular, but the more parts you see flying off, the more protection for the driver. I think people often conflate that, right? They see the car explode and they think, wow, that's like terrible. There must have been a really impactful crash, which is true, but also all of that energy is being dissipated because the car's basically exploded. If the car didn't explode and it just hit the wall and stayed in one piece, that means a lot of the energy is going through the driver, right? So it goes to show the leaps and bounds that have been made in safety, but also completely annihilated the car. So yeah, good luck, of course, to Williams getting this one back together. Here's Oscar Piastri on the left driving past, and the car actually quite quickly caught fire as well, as we saw at the start of the video. So Sargeant gets out and, thankfully he was fine. It's kind of incredible that he was fine for an impact that big, but look, it was his mistake at the end of the day. You could see the Williams mechanics being like, oh my god, this guy, he's done it again. And I can't imagine they were so happy about it. This pick though does kind of go hard, so he got that one. Might be his most legendary moment in the sport, actually. Goes pretty hard, not gonna lie. So I guess every cloud has a silver lining, right? But yeah, it's obviously only a matter of time until Sargeant's gone, and they weren't able to repair the car in time for him to get into qualifying, which is no surprise. Like, the the chassis was marginally destroyed, well, substantially destroyed. The engine was pretty damaged. The gearbox was destroyed. So, yeah, no chance really to recover that car for qualifying. We'll see what they can come up with for tomorrow, because Albon, with the new upgrades that Williams have brought, very, very competitive today, as we'll get into. This was the end of the practice session, and yeah, because there was a red flag for like 50 minutes, eventually when they did get back on track, there was only really one lap or so done, and it was wet conditions, of course. We saw Hamilton and Verstappen like basically racing each other on the final lap, so they weren't going fast at all, and it was Gasly, Magnussen, Bottas, three polar bears have found themselves in Arlington, Texas, and you know, they were obviously kind of my blood at that one. There was also this drama as well. I don't know if you guys really think this is a big deal. I felt like there was a bit of overreaction here, to be honest. But this is a Max Verstappen classic, isn't it? So they're coming out of the pits to try and get a flying lap in. They want to ensure they can get rounds back before the checkered flag falls. So Max overtakes Piastri and then overtakes Russell on the outside. Now, you're not allowed to cross this white line, and I'm pretty sure that Max does cross it. He definitely touches it. I'm not sure if one wheel was completely over the line or not. But, you know, this probably should be some sort of a fine. It's just Max does this stuff and gets away with it. And people are, I think, annoyed that he gets away with this stuff. It's a bit cheeky. It's probably unnecessary. But it's just Max Verstappen at the end of the day. This is the type of stuff that he does. And unless they're going to put a rule in place to stop him doing it, he's going to keep doing it. And some people are going to love him for it. Some people are going to hate him for it. It is what it is. But, you know, I'm not really sure that stewards cared too much about this, to be fair. Williams, as I said, confirmed that, yeah, we're assessing the chassis. It currently looks okay. But, yeah, they couldn't make it work in time, which was really no surprise. So qualifying gets underway, and this weekend I was expecting to be kind of like a three-horse fight for pole position between the McLarens, Max, and then the Mercedes, right? That was my expectation. McLaren, I thought, were probably favoured, especially in the dry conditions. If it rains today, I would have said that Verstappen might have been my favourite for pole, just because the Red Bull have been running a higher downforce version. It seems like in Spa and now here as well, the Red Bull are finding their car performance a bit better on the higher downforce. Now, they still have a lot of understeer in the car, and they've really tried to dial that out today, and it doesn't seem to be helping. And of course, this still raises questions. I mean, watching some of Verstappen's onboards today, the amount of understeer he was getting through the second sector, it's like, that's understeer the car wasn't really getting last year, and it raises again the questions on the asymmetric braking, right? Because that's one of the main benefits of asymmetric braking is the turn in through the corner and, you know, eliminating understeer at times. Now, Red Bull, especially in Verstappen's final run, were able to dial some of that out of the car, but it was definitely a problem for them this weekend, and it seems like they are preferring now a higher downforce setup where they actually lose time on the straights, Red Bull, in order to compensate for that. And that might have worked very well today had it rained, because higher downforce gives you a substantial advantage there, as we saw back in Spa. But it didn't rain, and it also can mean that from a straight line perspective, you can be more vulnerable in a race condition, but yet you're going to, you know, prepare your tyres better, and you're going to preserve your tyres better over the course of race distance. So there's obviously pros and cons with what Red Bull, it seems, are doing, but this was the start of Q1, and I think this was the mainly confusing thing about today's Mercedes, is that early doors, it looked very competitive. Like Q1, Russell was actually struggling. Russell was the one struggling with the car, struggling with oversteer, struggling with understeer, just struggling with the balance of the car through the corners, certainly through the middle sector. But Hamilton was 7 tenths up, 1:11.3, right there with Norris, right there with Piastri, and, you know, it looked like, yeah, the Mercedes, the McLarens, they're going to be fighting for the pole. But all of a sudden, Hamilton started to have the issues that Russell had, and it kind of went the other way around, and the car just wasn't competitive enough, right? So it's very interesting. Now, the big drama of Q1 was Hamilton versus Perez, and as Perez says, what's this idiot doing? He was in the way. Hamilton's like, I was well out of his way, and the stewards have had to look into this. So it was definitely a very interesting moment, a difficult one for Hamilton to actually do anything about. He attempted to avoid the situation. Was he in the way? Yes. He just got out of the way, I think, of a Haas. Then he comes around the next corner, and then he goes all the way to the far left-hand side. Perez obviously takes the racing line. But Hamilton, I mean, realistically, unless he stopped the car, he was always going to be on the racing line on the exit. So I think it was just unfortunate, really, for both parties. But understandably, Perez was annoyed because it meant that he had to do another run to get through, which he did successfully and went P1 at the end. But he wasted another set of soft tyres to do so. And, of course, this was the key moment that even Hamilton was talking about later on that affected the preparation for the rest of his time, really. This was the angle through the corner, where if Perez very much takes to the inside of the corner, he will be fine and avoid Hamilton. But it just, the racing line ended up being where Hamilton was, but it's like, he can't stop the car, he can't drive off the track, there's only so much that can be done. So a difficult set of circumstances, really. As I'm recording this, the stewards are yet to make a decision as to whether Hamilton's going to get a 3-place penalty or not. The reality is it's not massively going to affect his chances for tomorrow's race, at least of getting a podium, because that is highly unlikely anyway, especially around a place like this. So then Russell is on the radio